Hello everybody, welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
My name is James, and for the benefit of the podcast listeners, Suj hasn't thought this through because he's speaking through a mask at the moment.
You're the one that looks like you're wearing a mask, mate.
Who are you going for, Skeletor?
I'm going for wake up in the morning, remember there's fancy dress at work, and shout at my wife, what have we got that I can just get and take and run out the house with? I have no idea, mate.
I do fancy dress every day anyway, so... hello, Suj. You can remove the mask now, I think, mate.
I was going to do the whole podcast in it, but...
You're not going to do the whole podcast in the mask.
The audio is shit.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
I've got headphones on and the audio was shit as I was talking through the mask. So, do you know what this mask is? Last year... You know, the kind of week after, days after Halloween, when they just put everything on reduced because who wants to buy Halloween shit anymore? 99p, job done. Maybe it'll come on a little bit later. We shall see.
Why are you watching highlights of Brentford v Wolves?
That's for the patrons to understand later when we have rants about Diego Costa. Game week 14 has finished.
It has.
And another full weekend of football. It's a funny one. 8 games in one day is rare these days. So you kind of get to the end of it and you have a real feel for where a lot of people's teams are because there's only a handful of players left. There's not as much fluctuation on a Sunday, but 8 games on a Saturday felt weird, to be honest with you.
Got to be honest, I was only really concentrating on one.
Between the hours of 3 and 5:30.
No, just anyway. Because Katie was out all day, so I had Harry all day, right?
Yeah.
And my mum and dad come round as well. And yeah, we just threw him the iPad for the 3 o'clock, basically.
Nice.
How was your game week?
Very good.
Callum Wilson, owner, to my right.
Yes, I was indeed. And when he was banging the goals and the assists in, honestly, that was it was nice because sometimes transfers don't come off. This one particularly did. I ended on 77 points. I should sign out of my minus 56 and sign into my main team. But yeah, obviously I had Haaland and put the vice on Mo Salah.
You didn't actually. We should probably cover this first because that was the main headline of the day. I'm going to guess you didn't have the information that many of us did have on Erling Haaland.
In that he wasn't going to play?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I was in the gym.
So Team News and Ticks had put on his Insta about 15 minutes before deadline that Haaland and Foden weren't going to start. And then it became quite clear before the deadline, not before the deadline, before the teams come out, that Haaland wasn't in the squad either. You didn't have that info?
No. Irrelevant, largely, because...
you vice-captain Mo Salah.
Vice-captain Mo Salah, and I wouldn't have sold either with 2 home games coming in the last 2 fixtures before the World Cup. Like, even Foden... he's got benched. I'm good, fine. 2 home games against Fulham and Brentford.
Do you remember the conversation we had about Foden this time last week? When I said to you, don't second guess Pep because he's been left out of this one. Oh, he definitely play the next one. I was like, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work like that.
And it still doesn't work like that for next week.
But it wouldn't have changed my thought process on selling Foden. Like, I wouldn't have sold Foden.
No, for me, it was deliberating if it was worth essentially a -8. Because I knew it would be -4 to remove him for, say, Saka. And then -4 to bring him back in as well. And there'll be a lot of probably done that. And obviously Saka's obviously now a major doubt for the game at Chelsea on Sunday that may be thinking back. And look, obviously in that one, it's worked out not doing it. I'm in a stronger position for having not done it.
I had depth as well, right, in the bench from Pereira, Gahey, and then if I really needed Lewis Dunk, I needed the first 2 actually. Doherty, because I played Gahey. So, yeah, it was fine. I thought, let me just leave it. I'd like to have 2 frees going into this week, which I do. There was a stack load of players on 4 yellows, and there was the danger that 1 or 2 might dip to 5 yellows, and then I've got other problems to kind of put out. So Haaland was my only real problem. I left it. And I ended up going into the game with double defensive Newcastle, Pope and Trippier. That was very good. Cancelo's clean sheet. I played Gahey over Doherty, which was largely irrelevant because
So did I by accident.
Yeah, anyone that played Doherty got Gahey anyway.
Exactly.
So that was largely irrelevant. Salah captain, vice captain. That's captain Martinelli. Were my midfield returners, and then I had Callum Wilson up top, which was tidy. So 77 points. Interestingly, I don't know if you'll be able to answer this question, James. Do you know what that gives me a game week rank of? You're looking at it on screen.
I can't see it. I'm going to guess a million-ish.
$1 million.
Yeah.
1.09 million, which is
I mean, Wilson's made
low.
Wilson's made it a very good, $1 million for a game week rank. Remember, it's 10 million teams now, right?
Yeah, I suppose.
You have a 1 million game week rank, mate. You're going to do very, very well. I'm 3 million game week rank and a small red arrow, basically. Wilson has made what for you would have been, I think, a bad game week. Like if he blanks there, you've had a bad week, really. A very good week. It's obviously a monster haul. He could have had more as well.
730k to 480k. It's a big jump, right? 350,000 places.
When you played the wild card, what, in 13?
Yeah.
So where were you after 12?
No. I played it in 12.
You played it in 12. Oh, you had to
go early.
So where were you at the end of 11?
796.
And you're now?
487.
Yeah, on the climb, yeah. Interesting, because I had big jumps, obviously. Mine was a way bigger jump. I mean, admittedly, I was further behind. I was like 1.8 when I went to like 250k in the 3 weeks that I wildcarded after game week 8. But I've been on a slow decline since, where I'm about 500k. And my decline was summed up. I'm holding David Moyes responsible for all my problems this week. Because on Thursday night, I messaged our dear friend, FPL captain, who obviously assists with my deadline graphics. I messaged him and said, I'm going Solanke to Wilson. Not going to do anything until I've got all the team news. Message you tomorrow night, basically. Then I messaged him about an hour later and went, shit, Bowen looks like he's out. I'm going to have to rethink this, possibly. And the rethink was because if I had no Bowen, no Haaland, you know anyway as an owner of Manchester City players that it can easily be a 0-pointer because Pep can bench a Foden and also decide not to bring him on. Obviously, in this case, he did. I had Emerson, Palmieri of West Ham, who's not been getting minutes, didn't get on yesterday. Did he get on yesterday?
No,
he didn't, no. And Doherty, who's obviously a big rotation risk as well. So I'm looking at it going, I went Solanke. And Solanke was obviously flagged as well. And I didn't think Solanke was going to play. And obviously he did start for Bournemouth. And suddenly I'm looking at it going, if I roll here, the worst case scenario is I could have like 8 players or something here as a worst case. So I decided that something had to go. But the problem was that once I had doubts about Bowen, and I really shouldn't have had doubts about Bowen because I was never bothered about him at Manchester United this week anyway. Didn't fancy him to return, as we've spoken about a number of times. Only 17% of his Premier League goals have come away from home. I spoke lots about expecting that game to be stingy anyway, and it was. But it made me overthink and start looking for alternatives. And then the more I looked at Solanke, the more I thought, well, Leeds away, Everton at home last 2. If he's close enough to potentially be available this weekend, I don't mind keeping him for those last 2 fixtures. Knowing as well the intention in my mind was to go Mitrovic to Schumacher this coming week. That's probably still the move I'm going to end up making, I think. And no, I can't go Mitrovic to Wilson without taking a hit. Was conscious of that when I made the decision to do what I did. And the more I looked, the more I thought, you know what? I can get the Trent here and no one else is going for it, Suj. And of course, we can be hindsight merchants, but the actual reality is in Liverpool's last 2 home league games, they won 1-0 twice. And it's the sort of one can easily lead to a Trent 9-pointer if he plays well. And I don't think any of us expected Leeds to go to Liverpool and win. So I'm looking at it going, so you've got Leeds, Southampton at home in 2 of the next 3. And the other game's Tottenham away, and Tottenham have not been firing. We've said we're just kind of crawling, as seen again at the weekend, we're just kind of crawling to get to the World Cup in our own status. They'd won 3-0 at Ajax in midweek. I'm thinking there's an opportunity here because the defensive problem for me was never going away. I didn't really want to play Gay this week just gone. Again, hindsight merchant, shouldn't have worried about it. He did end up coming in my team anyway. But I wanted him, only ever really wanted him as cover. Exactly ideal. Okay, someone misses out, he's going to come in. Emerson and Doherty, I knew were going to be massive problems coming into this weekend. And I still think even Cancelo, potentially. So I didn't want to be in a position, I could have been in a position coming into game week 15 where I'm looking at going, I've got Trippier away to Southampton, it's fine. I've got Gay away to West Ham, it's not great. okay, I've got Cancelo. It's great if he plays, but I've got no cover here. I've got problems. It's ongoing. Something's going to happen that's going to put me in a bad defensive position. So I decided to reorganise it. Admittedly, one of the things that I could have ended up doing was Emerson to Lindelof. He didn't even play for United, right? So I'd have been in a roundabout circle.
Talked about him.
So I decided to just remove Emerson out of the situation and buy Trent, which obviously needed something to fund something else. So I could have gone Solanke to a 4.3, but that wasn't going to help me from a numbers perspective this weekend. So I decided to go Bowen to Rashford. So Bowen to Rashford, yeah, great. Trent's obviously not worked out. And the bigger picture is, although the hit works, the original plan was just to buy fucking Wilson, wasn't it? So, and it was possibly influenced by looking more at Solanke, where I'd been thinking all week, oh, he's been forced off here with a bit of damage. There's every chance he'll be out till the World Cup. Him then potentially being available threw me a bit from the plan. Thing I don't need to, need and want. But then I didn't need Trent. It was okay. I can do it. I want to do it. Listen, hindsight merchant. Obviously, if I could go back and do it again, I wouldn't have done it. But I'm not moving him now. And I've got Trent, Cancelo, and Trippier potentially playing for me this weekend, which looks exciting on paper in a weekend where clean sheets look like they're going to be difficult to find this week, I think.
Yep. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, this is a question that we've had on Q&As, and we get asked on our Patreon Q&As quite often. Talk about Patreon in a sec. But in America, for example, in some sports, they have to publish their injury list and injury statuses before the weekend and what have you. I think there might come a point where we're going to have to start looking at this, because the reason it's such a big deal with America as well is obviously gambling, right? People are betting money on games and large amounts of money, and I think it's almost feels a little bit unfair.
But then if you take, I said I'm blaming David Moyes. David Moyes said on Thursday night after West Ham's Europa game that he's not trained. He's got a bit of an ankle knock. He's out for the weekend. It's not a lie.
Yeah. But I think they publish more in-depth data, don't they? Someone who's listened to the podcast.
There's no responsibility for David Moyes to call a journalist on Saturday and say, oh yeah, by the way, Jared Bowen's travelling to United. He's definitely fine. I think that's what you're saying. Do we need something more concrete than...
Oh, what's the issue? What medications is he on? What's the treatment plan? And people like Ben Dinnery or whatever might be able to actually give us a realistic opinion on the information rather than...
Well, Ben does great work on that anyway, and he's not the only one in the community.
No, but again, he's reliant on the information that he has, and if they don't give him good information, then he can only judge conclusions of. So give the information and then decide, like inflamed or so. I think
by the way, I don't know what Ben's opinion was on it. I have no clue whatsoever.
I just think it feels a bit unfair when people are making decisions with suspect, dodgy information, and when gambling and money and that kind of thing is involved, I feel like it's a little bit annoying. Like if you're going to set an accumulator of 6 teams on a Saturday morning, and one of those games happens to be West Ham, Man United, for example, you're using the information you have. I don't know. Anyway,
I've got no complaints. Listen, only me made the decision. And I've only got myself to blame.
From a fantasy point of view, the absolute, I'm not 100% sure, but I think the most annoying thing for me is the whole will he play, won't he play discussion. Who's nailed, who's not. Is he going to start, is he not? It's so out of your control to a certain degree. And if you're making week-to-week decisions just based on appearance, let alone like longevity, then it's not going to work, right? So I don't like getting sucked into this.
Here's an example for this coming week. So a lot of the guys you haven't got Saka, have you?
Nope.
A lot of the guys listening will. Now, yesterday, I don't know why, the coverage I was watching yesterday, they kept showing this incident where he took a tumble around the 15-minute mark. He got a whack after about 3 minutes and had been struggling right from there really early on. And he stayed on for a good 20 minutes or so. He had been hobbling for nearly the whole of the first quarter of the game. Unless he's confirmed out, unless it comes out this week, oh my God, Saka is out of the World Cup, for example, which I don't think is going to be the case, I'm almost certain you will not get information going into this weekend. Because Arteta, after Arsenal play on Thursday night, he's going to do his little thing after the game and he's going to say, we'll see. I can almost tell you that now. So if you're a Saka owner, unless it comes out clearly in the build-up to Arsenal's Europa game that he's got a serious problem, prepare now to know that you're not going to get the information. Is basically where we're at. And I don't expect we're going to get it on Haaland either. Now, the one benefit we're going to have in terms of Haaland this coming week is there's no early kickoff. There's no 12:30 game. So the deadline is later this week. It's at 1:30 p.m. UK time. And if it's anything like the weekend just gone, we'll get the information ahead of deadline. Now, what we did have, Suj, and I don't know if you're even aware of this, but the website crashed.
Yeah, I did see a lot of people that tried to make lastminute.com transfers 3 to 4 minutes out.
Again, sympathy is little, but I was debating right till the end whether to bring Gahey off the bench in place of Foden. In fact, no, it was Doherty. I was debating, do I bring Doherty into the team instead of Foden? And I wasn't convinced that Doherty was going to play either. I did think he would. I thought it was more likely than unlikely. But I thought, well, this could easily be a one-pointer as well. Foden's probably a one-pointer. And I tried to make the move at the end. It didn't happen. And it cost me exactly nothing in the end. It made absolutely zero difference to what would have happened to my team. But there are other people who obviously tried to make transfers, and I think that was a popular one, Foden to Saka right at the end. And actually, as this worked out, although you would have had 3 more extra points this week, I think most people are probably quite pleased, and some would have been doing it for hits, obviously, so it would have been -1. Most people are pleased that it didn't go through. But it's led to last-minute waiting again. And obviously, they brought the deadline forward an hour and a half ahead of deadline to try and avoid this sort of thing happening. When you've got 10 million teams, or as I like to say, 3 million players, if you will, and 7 million robots. Don't tell me it's not robots. 2 people captained Reece Nelson this week, who hadn't played a single minute all season. You can't tell me there aren't robot teams, honestly. This problem still exists. What do you think the solution is to this? Because all it's made is people get information in different ways. And actually, it might have been easier this week gone because City were away. It might not be so easy this week with City being at home. It might arrive at the ground a little bit later, for example. I don't know. Do you think there's a solution to this? Because they obviously moved the deadline to stop people having additional information.
If you want to make it fair for everybody, move the deadline the other way.
So you make it to the first kickoff.
Yes,
but it doesn't make it fair for everybody.
But the problem with that is then you'll have a higher volume of people wanting to make transfers right up to the deadline. So you've got a higher probability the website will crash. But look, that's a technology problem. That's a technology problem, not anything else. So they could probably fix that with better servers and tech. It doesn't make it fair for people that live in time zones that are asleep. But then that's the issue with a game that's played internationally. Sky Fantasy Football, the deadline is kickoff. But
technically, it's only UK players. So.
And also, so you should be awake. And also, the volume of players and transfers made is much smaller. But I think then you don't. If you had it an hour before, like once a team's revealed, in that first 10, 15 minutes, people will make their transfers. They won't be leaving it till the last 5 or 10 minutes.
But some still will. Because I know this from even with Sky,
it's choice.
Where people, I want to see the player do the warm-up first. Because it's not like no one's ever got injured in the warm-up, right? Yeah. So I just think, in terms of Sky, I think, well, if that happens, that's just ridiculously unlucky. I'm not going to leave it that late in case something goes wrong. But unfortunately, there isn't a solution that works for everybody. No. There isn't. What do we do? Do we say you've got to be 12 hours in advance or something? There isn't a solution that's going to work for everybody, unfortunately, because of time zones around the world. What's the difference to Australia? 12 hours or something, right? So there's no way, and always, I sent a tweet out on Saturday about it, and I've regretted it instantly because you just cannot please everybody. Someone is always going to be affected negatively in terms of they haven't got the information. So the honest answer is I don't know how to make it fair. I don't think moving it to the first kickoff is going to work unless they massively overhaul their system, because clearly it can't cope with the volume right at the end. I don't know. Do we go to 2 hours? Do we go to 3 hours? Where does it stop? There's always going to be some sort of information. Even if you go 2 hours before, someone's going to have the information that the average person doesn't in terms of, this person's travelled or had. There's always going to be some sort of advantage for people who are on the pulse right till the last minute, unfortunately. I don't think there is a logical way to make it absolutely fair for everybody. And I know even just saying this sort of comment, people go, yeah, but this for me or this for me. There isn't. They have my sympathy. Maybe it should go to 2 hours. But I don't know if that's... I think it would just become something else then. Did he travel? Did he travel? People get the information differently.
Take a midweek game which starts at 7:30, then you'd have a 5:30, and then people are, I'm at work. Like even people in the UK. So it's... Whatever. Yeah, you never please all of the people.
You can't.
Cool. We're going to run down all of the games as we do each and every Monday. Just a little bit of what happened from an FPL point of view. I think as we get very close to the World Cup, some teams are going to rule themselves out now of reckoning. We're thinking very short term. Obviously, as soon as we've passed that deadline for Gameweek 16, we're on a free-for-all, James. Make as many transfers as you like. We know, and I don't even want to say 100%, I want to say like 95%. There's no price changes during the World Cup, is there?
Okay, so I checked this with FPL Focals. Obviously got a great YouTube channel, because it was him that I first saw comment that there wouldn't be transfers. He said he'd went to them officially and asked, and he was told that there wouldn't be any, and I presume that will just be from when Game Week 16 opens. The game reopens, deadline passes, just up until whenever Game Week 17 starts, which I guess is going to be 11 a.m. on Boxing Day. That there's no changes. But there isn't anything in the rules that specifically says. I just know that Focal's not on the wind-up.
No.
He's been told that information has relayed it truthfully. That's all I know. So
we're working with that information.
I'm sure there will be something there has to be something that clarifies that one way or the other.
Yep,
it's got to be. Yeah. And I do think that pausing transfers would be the right thing to do, and everybody just bloody switches off for a little bit and enjoys the football,
which will be the World Cup. We've had a few questions about what we're going to be doing during the second half of November and the majority of December. And it's a good opportunity for us, I think, just to give you a rundown of what's going to be happening before we get into the games, because we are looking to grow our community as well during that time. Many of you will know that we support the show by having a Patreon, which has additional content every single day for intermediate and advanced tiers.
Midweek.
We have weekdays.
I don't work Sundays.
Weekdays.
Although I did last night.
Well, watching Spurs is hard work on a Sunday sometimes, right?
It's true.
We also have a Slack community, which has got hundreds of people in there. Very, very nice, active fantasy managers, supporters of all sorts of different teams, and a great community there. Prize leagues, and then we have meetups and all sorts of other stuff as well. Patrons, how we keep the lights on. And in December, James, how much is it?
It's free.
Nice.
So it's 2 for 1 if you want to sign up. And to be honest, if you do it today, we'll refund your payment, because otherwise you're going to get charged twice in 2 days.
Do it tomorrow. Saves James.
You're better off waiting until the morning. But if you think you're going to forget, sign up today, and I will refund it. So it's basically 2 for 1. So if you sign up in November, you've got December completely free as well. And on top of that, in January, we're going to bump everyone up a tier as well. So effectively, were you to sign up to even basic tier this month, which gets you access into our Slack community. In December, there's no charge, so you've still got that. And then in January, you get all the podcasts as well.
Nice.
And you'll spend £11 over them 3 months.
Yep.
So intermediate tiers will get the advanced tier content. In January, advanced tier will get extra as well.
If you follow James on Twitter, have a scroll down some of his tweets. There is a Patreon post. You can relink it in the comments on the
It's only available to patrons.
The post is.
Yeah.
Right.
I could make it open.
We'll give you a rundown of what we are doing. And during the World Cup, James, what's the plan?
So plan is for the normal content. Obviously, look, the first 6 midweek days, the 21st to 25th and Monday 28th, there's games at 10 a.m., 1 p.m., 4 p.m., 7 p.m. And I don't know about anybody else, but I haven't got time to listen to podcasts. I want to watch all the football. So I'm going to be streaming on those 6 days at 8 o'clock in the morning for half hour or so, just to kind of update on the latest football and stuff. We'll turn that quickly into a podcast before the opening game starts as well. And then on Patreon, we're going to be doing a watch-along on each of those 6 days at different times as well. Got a few guests joining me. Nico's going to do the Portugal game with me on the Thursday of the World Cup. You're going to do a couple of Mondays with me. Adam Pritchard, Clayton from the Arsenal Bite Size podcast, and Peter Featherstone, FPL.team, is going to be coming in here to watch a game with me during the tournament, and we'll just stream for 2 hours, watch a game together.
Yeah, in amongst that, there'll be bits and pieces of video content and all of that kind of thing as well. And then once we come out of the World Cup, as we ramp up towards the deadlines for all of the fantasy games that we produce content, Sky and FPL and so on, we'll be ramping that up. I think there's also going to be a little bit of a Patreon bits and pieces on EFL as well. We've been asked by some patrons to
in
do
December,
a little bit.
yeah, definitely.
We've got quite a few patrons that
before the Premier League,
obviously follow Championship and lower league clubs as well, and want to kind of fan insight and that kind of thing. So we've got a busy schedule planned over that period. Like, it's not like we're down tools. Obviously, the World Cup's going to be a nice focus. No doubt, we'll probably play a bit of World Cup fantasy. Why not? Chuck it in there as well. It will be a good opportunity, and we do want to grow the community as much as we can. So if you were to sign up in November and join the club, then December, free of charge. January, get a bump up in tiers, so you get to see all the additional stuff as well. And then it's your choice. Should you wish to stay, we'll happily have you. If you want to leave, also.
Well, that's it. Come and try it.
It's literally, we don't mind if you want to take all the free stuff. It's all here for you. We do it each and every week. So no problem at all. There we go. That's the sales pitch over. Let's talk about some football. Leicester 0, Manchester City 1.
Before we do, suspensions.
Yes,
it's just going to be easier to just round this up quickly rather than on each one in case I miss someone.
Right.
So there are 4 players suspended now because of 5 yellow cards going into game week 15. Ivan Toney of Brentford, who obviously with Manchester City game week 16 as well, that becomes sell. Bobby Decordova-Reid of Fulham, who's been covering at right back, got his 5th yellow at the weekend. He'll be suspended for the trip to Manchester City. A, I don't suppose anyone owns. B, you weren't starting him at Man City anyway, I shouldn't imagine. Kenny Tete will likely come in his place. Bruno Fernandes is suspended for Manchester United's trip to Aston Villa at the weekend, 5th yellow card. Joel Linton is suspended for Newcastle's trip to Southampton. Diego Costa will probably speak about a little bit more in a little bit. He's suspended for 2 Premier League games following his red card at Brentford. The reason it's 2 games is because he'll be suspended for Wolves' League Cup tie next midweek. Yellow cards do not carry over into the Carabao Cup. So if anybody's thinking, if my player gets booked this weekend, he's suspended for the League Cup, he won't be. He'll be suspended for Premier League. Only suspensions carry into domestic cup competitions if they are red cards.
Right.
That's why Costa will miss 2 Premier League games. So if you do have a player gets booked this weekend, they will miss game week 16, not the League Cup game. There are a number of important assets who are on 4 yellow cards. And obviously, if they don't get booked in the next 2 weeks, great. But it will influence, I think, how we feel about them on Unlimited. Because essentially, it carries up to each team's 19th game. So it's not game week 19, it's 19th game. So if you pick up 5 yellow cards before your club's 19th game, 1 game ban. And then if you pick up 10, I think it's before the 32nd game, you'll get a 2-game ban. And there are a few players, such as Anthony Gordon and Ruben Neves, who are already on 6 yellow cards this season. Players on 4 yellow cards include the Arsenal pair, William Saliba, Gabriel Jesus. You've got Jacob Ramsey of Villa, Smith and Metham of Bournemouth, Aaron Hickey of Brentford, Alexis McAllister maybe in a few teams of Brighton, Cheikh Doucouré of Crystal Palace. He's on 5, despite what it tells you on the FPL website. He's not a problem. Mark Gay of Crystal Palace is obviously in my team and will be in others, now on 4 yellows. Onana of Everton, Tete and Reid of Fulham are on 4. Harrison Reid will be in a couple of teams as a 4.5. Mitrovic is now on 4 yellow cards as well, which I think adds to the appeal of potentially moving him on before the trip to Manchester City. Diogo Dalot of Manchester United is proving really popular at the moment. He's on 4 yellow cards. Newcastle's Fabian Schär is on 4. Cook, McKenna and Worrell of Nottingham Forest are on 4 yellows. Rodrigo Bentancur of Tottenham is on 4 yellows. So too now is Harry Kane. And should Erling Haaland be ruled out for this weekend or the next 2 weeks, the instinct is to buy Kane, I think, for many, from a value perspective, those who don't own. He's on 4 yellows. Thilo Kehrer of West Ham is also on 4 yellows.
Right, good rundown there. And anybody that wants that repeated, just hit the back button. Rewind 30 seconds, 45 seconds.
Exactly that. Obviously, any other player that's not on 4 yellows cannot be suspended before the unlimited period unless they are sent off at the weekend.
Right. Leicester 0, Manchester City 1 then, I think is where we should start, which was the early kickoff. I think Kevin De Bruyne could have got that free kick about 2 inches higher.
He'd have missed.
Nah, 2 inches. I think he was 2 inches too low.
It's postage stamp, isn't it? Postage stamp, top bin, completely unsavable.
Almost.
I was
2 inches.
I was so
2
tempted
inches.
to tweet. I think Ward should have saved that just for the bands, just to see what the reaction would have been. I mean, it's unstoppable, completely unsavable, impossible.
My first reaction was I miss him.
Yeah,
in my fantasy team. I made the decision on wildcard that he could go before the blank and Foden would fill his boots. Obviously, clearly hasn't. There's still time.
It's still the right decision. I think.
I'm not worried about that, but
you got to think what you've done with the other 4 million as well, right?
Oh, I really miss him.
No, I hear that. Brilliant asset. Look, he's returned in 9 of City's 11 games in the league this season. 9 assists. It's only the 3 goals, admittedly. But he is playing in this more, I would say, permanent advanced position now. And it only makes him more interesting. And I just wonder if we are in a position, you think to yourself, if Haaland is ruled out for 2 weeks, just hypothetically, well, the third Man City player I want is him, isn't it? So what do I do? Do I take a -4 to force him in? I was looking at which midfielder I'd move for De Bruyne. I'm thinking, I don't really want to move any of them. I'd arguably force moving Rashford, maybe, who I've just got in.
And sell Haaland.
I think if Haaland was definitely ruled out for the 2 games, you should sell, yeah. I think.
Value.
But if he's just, sod it, it's 2 weeks, mate. It's 2 weeks. Come back and you buy him, and you know you can buy him back comfortably on unlimited, and okay, it's going to cost you a little bit more. But what you can do with 25 million's worth, roughly, over 2 weeks, says that you should probably do something, I think, if he was ruled out. If he's just doubtful, he'll be my captain again this weekend, and I'll crack on and take the circumstances of however it lands.
Yeah, I think
I'd have to have a think about vice captain. Arguably be Foden, which has a risk in itself.
I'm having a look at here. I bought 11.5. I think most of us would have got 11.5. He's 12.2 now, so you'd get 11.8. So even if he drops to 12.1, you still get 11.8. So the likelihood if he was ruled out is that he would be sold en masse.
Yes.
And would drop to 12.
I would say
12
so,
or 11.9. Yeah. So at that point, you're talking about 0.1, 0.2 is the value loss. I think you're right. I think at that point, yeah, fine. I'd ride it for the first pip drop to 12.1 to wait and see. But if it was going to drop to 12, then I think, you know what, yeah, fine, move it on if it was confirmed. But I mean, likelihood is we're not going to get that information, are we? So.
Well, look, City play in the Champions League on Wednesday night, so we might get a midweek update as well as a Friday update from Guardiola. So, yeah, I mean, look, it's not a move on for me currently. Those who are off who have sold will be thinking, I hope he misses out again and makes life easy. But he's a very good reason why not to make early moves this week. Plus, you've got several key, obviously, European fixtures taking place this week, even to the extent that Manchester United will be looking to win by a couple of goals in Sociedad on Thursday night, so they can try and skip that last 32 stage in Europa. So early transfers I would try and avoid. Like if you're looking, oh my God, Wilson's getting steamed into, I'd try and calm down at the most. 2 weeks left. It's way more important you get the decision right than get the value at this particular stage, is my opinion. Leicester changed system. So he went to a back 3, and Kagler Sinshu reappeared from nowhere. I thought he'd been banished completely. Played left-sided centre-back. They played a 3-4-3 / 5-4-1 very much effectively without the ball, very deep. Aaron Legg was on Clash of Correspondence this week, which we already recorded last night. And I know he was a little bit disappointed that they didn't give a little bit more to try and get something out of the game. That said, De Bruyne scored the winning goal with an absolute weldy, and Yuri Tielemans has come fraction away from possibly scoring an even better goal with an equaliser, right? Which I think a foot either side of Ederson is a goal. He only saves it because it's right above his head. So I think we're probably at a stage with Leicester where Wout Faes has settled. Yes, Sideshow Bob. He's settled in the team well enough now that you probably past targeting them now. City didn't have a big chance in the game,
Yeah, I'm just thinking about your comment. I think it's fair.
Which is a little bit wrong because Alvarez had a big chance but was flagged offside, and it's the sort of one won't show on the statistics. We haven't seen the lines on it, but he looks onside, and that would obviously go down as a big chance. Ward did save it, admittedly, but it's something to be aware of when you're looking at some of the data from the game just gone. But yeah, I think targeting them is it's interesting. They go to Everton, they go to West Ham, and I think the instinct is the likes of if people looking for Tony replacements, Mitrovic replacements, Calvert-Lewin, Schumacher come kind of right near the top of those lists. But should they? Have Leicester improved enough that we shouldn't look at that as a good fixture now?
It's a okay fixture. I look at it and I'm like, okay, I'm not buying any Leicester because they're away for the next 2 games, so they're out of my buying mindset. But I don't mind the fixtures. It wouldn't put me off Schumacher.
I just pick up. No, Schumacher, as I said, is still right in my thoughts. We'll speak about him more at the end. Interesting you comment on Leicester having 2 away games before they finish up. Do you know which team scored the most away goals in the Premier League this season?
Leicester.
It is.
Yeah.
Got 12 in 6 away games. Includes scoring twice at Tottenham, twice at Arsenal. Admittedly, heavy defeats. Twice at Brighton, heavy defeats. But actually, scoring goals has never been a problem with this team, right? They've scored 21 goals overall. They've scored 12 of those away from home, actually. So why not? Why not look at bringing James Maddison back in if that's how they're performing away from home? Who's their game week 16 game? I know obviously got Everton away this Saturday, and they've got themselves. So yeah, I don't think they'd appeal that much. But if someone, I don't know, what do you do if you're in a situation where you're a Saka owner, and let's say you got information that Foden, you haven't got Foden, and you got the information that he's not going to, I think that's where you'd go, but you got the information that he's not starting, do you consider putting Maddison back in now?
Yeah. I think it's
not consistent, isn't it?
That's it, right? You want good players at a fair price, and I think that's what James Maddison is. A good player at a fair price.
And I think as we discussed on COTC as well about, say, Timothy Castagne, which a number of you will be on, as I alluded to earlier, clean sheets look difficult to find this weekend. And it feels like play your attacking defensive players. It feels like that kind of week where if you're in doubt, just play the attacking ones. And he falls into that line where I think there's every chance he'll get beat at Everton, but I'd probably want to start him if I owned, I think.
Yep. Bournemouth 2, Spurs 3, 2-0 down, 3-2 up. Tottenham going to win the cup.
We ain't winning any cup playing. We ain't winning any cup playing like we played in the first half.
Why does it feel to me like you are now the new Manchester United in terms of you love scoring goals in the 90 plus? It just feels like you do it a lot. I don't know what the statistics would show, but if I think about Spurs, I think about the number of times I could reel off so many games where you scored late to win games or get something out of games in the last 2 years that I don't feel like I have that same, oh wow, Tottenham has scored again really late to get something out of a game. Is it just in my mind, or is it actually genuinely true?
Well,
you are scoring a hell of a lot of late goals.
It's the fourth time in 2022 we've won a game in injury time.
Yeah,
which obviously includes Steven Bergwijn scoring twice in 12 seconds at Leicester.
Yeah. It's a lot, right?
Obviously, you had the Kane disallowed goal last week. Probably influences your mind a little bit as well. So look, there is as much as people can criticise, there is certainly a never say die element to Tottenham. The fitness levels is something I've spoken about for a long time before Conte even took over. I said whoever comes in the door's got to sort out the fitness levels. They're much stronger now. Very strong fitness levels. I don't think with that in mind it's coincidental that Tottenham seems to get better as games go on, particularly when we're chasing a lead. I mean, against Lisbon last Wednesday, the first half performance was genuinely diabolical. In the second half, they've given everything they could to try and win the game. And Saturday was the same. First half performance, I wouldn't call it diabolical, but the first half performance on Saturday was flat. He went back to 3 in midfield, played 3-5-2 with Oliver Skip coming in. It's worth saying, probably of our first choice 11, I think he probably had 4 in the team on Saturday, which would be Loris, Højbjerg, Son and Kane. You can debate Emerson, Session on that kind of thing. But of the nailed starters, if you will, he's only gone with 4 of them. So the team was heavily rotated. That may have influenced the flatness of the first half. But we did nothing really to trouble Bournemouth in that period. We looked weak defensively. I spoke, I think, on Tottenham on Wednesday, saying that actually I was more concerned about Kiefer Moore than Solanke, because I know just dealing with the aerial can be a big problem for our wide centre-backs. And he took his 2 goals really well. The second goal was a brilliant goal from Bournemouth's perspective. Super cross from Adam Smith. And Moore, once you deliver properly for him, he's one of them sort of players, kind of unstoppable in the air, actually. So I didn't have a problem with the second goal. The first goal, there's many mistakes from Longley, Sanchez. Longley played quite well overall as the central centre-back, which should be noted for those who've got Eric Dyer. There's not a concern. Eric Dyer will obviously stay in the team. He's just been rotated for the one game here to give him a rest. He has started every game in every competition so far this season. But I think Longley showed that he can play that position, so maybe in the future it's another one where you could get a random break around sort of Champions League fixtures, perhaps later in the season as well. You shouldn't be concerned if you own going into Liverpool, other than the fact that we're playing Liverpool. Might be a concern depending on how you feel about it. Bournemouth tactically basically played a back 4 with the ball, played a back 5 without it, which put a huge amount of pressure on Marcus Tavernier on the right-hand side. And I thought his performance was fine, but he just got done in a position where they'd got 2-0 up. And the one thing that Sessegnon gives Tottenham that Perisic can't is exactly what you saw on Sessegnon's goal, that outright, I can burst past you without the ball in behind. And he obviously takes it quite well. And I wouldn't even say Tavernier defended it particularly poorly. I just think it was in part that he's almost having to do 2 people's jobs, which gave them in the first half the element they had an extra player on the pitch. Hence Adam Smith getting so high for the second goal. They are, with respect though, and despite the fact they fought incredibly valiantly, Bournemouth, no lack of commitment or anything like that, just a little bit short of the quality, actually. I mean, the pressure from the point that we scored the first goal was ridiculous. We had 19 corners, Suj. I think the record in the Premier League game, I want to say, is 20.
Wow.
And we obviously scored from 2 of them corners. We've now scored the most goals, actually, from corners this season, 9. We've spoken about this a few times with Tottenham this season, very much improving from set pieces. Travers doesn't cover himself well, particularly on Ben Davis's goal. He's got to do better with that. It was almost like a shock when Davis got a header on and put it in. Goalkeeper's got to do better there. Neto is clearly going to be a miss for them in the upcoming weeks, and it might be that their results suffer. And in terms of protecting Travers, they become even deeper. The game literally became such, will we score or won't we score?
We've been praising Bournemouth all season.
And they've done really well.
They're 2 points off relegation zone.
Yeah, and
when we get to the World Cup, they'll be in there. And I'm like, how did that happen? They've lost 3 in a row, and we've been saying, look, they've been doing well against the teams in and around, and suddenly they've just dropped down the table so quickly.
Listen, if you'd have said after they lost 9-0 at Liverpool they'd be in that position, they would be absolutely delighted, and they should be. And look, they might buy players in January and reinforce, right? So they've only got to get through, 3 or 4 more games before that window opens. And we have to remember that with a lot of teams at the moment. We're actually really, in terms of games left, we're very close to the transfer window, right? So stuff can change really quickly. But I think most neutrals would still expect them to go down. And I don't think that prediction is incorrect. I think exactly what Neil Grover has said to us is that actually first 11's all right. It's decent, it's competitive. They gave my team a proper football match. But they just run out of legs completely in that second half, and part of that is the inability to bring fresh quality into the game is punishing for them as well. And yes, I would very much expect them to get sucked into trouble. There'll be a few people looking at Leeds assets potentially now because it's Bournemouth at home. We mentioned it's a weekend where clean sheets might be difficult to find. Well, Leeds at home to Bournemouth could well be one at the weekend. Although I can imagine Leeds fans going, I don't think so, James. We don't really do them. I don't disagree. Yeah, they're going to be in trouble, unfortunately, Bournemouth. For Spurs, as said, we played 3 in midfield. it didn't work. The introduction of the substitutes had a very telling role in the game, particularly Bentancur, who, I've said this a few times, when he doesn't play, it is so blindingly obvious in terms of what we do on the ball. As soon as he got on the pitch, we looked like a football team again. Harry was quite quiet. I think part of that was the fact that Bournemouth were very deep, and because we played a three in midfield, had to stay quite high. Sonny's real involvement was purely crossing, mainly from dead ball situations throughout the game. Otherwise, didn't have much in terms of open play. Did have one from a Dyer cross late in the game. Dyer actually came on at right-sided centre-back, which was a really clever move from Conte when he came on, because they were so deep. Eric's actually a good crosser. Actually, if you can get him into those areas, you know he takes the odd free kick and stuff. So it was quite a smart move to go down that route and remove the hapless, and unfortunately he is more often than not Davinson Sanchez. As I've said previously, Suj, we are just bumbling through to the World Cup. The Liverpool fixture on Sunday is very, very interesting. There's a more important game we need to deal with in France tomorrow night. I think there's every chance we'll go out. But Liverpool, it goes without saying, that they're beatable, aren't they?
Yeah,
the way we will play, we will invite them. We will go, you have it. We will invite them. All Liverpool's big problems come and turnovers.
But on the counter-attack, you can. That's an end-to-end match that's going to just go from end-to-end. Basketball game is what I'm thinking about.
It's one of them. Liverpool could dominate and beat us comfortably because they do have the quality, or we could destroy them on a counter.
Yeah.
It could go either way.
It'll be entertaining football. I'm definitely sure of that. You'll be in for entertainment, and hopefully, you never know, you might be able to get a result there as well. Brentford 1, Wolves 1. Do you remember on a Friday we do a show for our patrons called The Differential Show, where we run down our teams and just prepare for the weekend? And we play a game, the minus 56. It's basically like a free hit every single week. Do you remember my third substitute on the bench?
Ben May.
And you said 15-point incoming. He fucking scored the goal. And I thought James was bang on it, because had they kept the clean sheet, that would have been a 15-pointer exactly for Ben Mee, third on the bench in that. It's like,
not only did he score, Ben Mee left-footed scissor kick. What's going on there, mate? I didn't have that on the bingo card at
those
the weekend. Brilliant goal.
15 points are still sitting third on the bench in that team. But look, you know what?
It is worth saying they missed him at Villa, and it was because he had a bit of an ankle knock going into that game, and you could tell they were without him. He's a very experienced defender, and they were certainly better off for having him back in the team at the weekend. The Tony Blank and fifth yellow is obviously incredibly annoying for owners. I truly think that he's got to go, in the sense that he's suspended for Forest away and then it's Man City away. There's got to be something you can go to. I think even -4s in that case. There's got to be something you think you can go for the 2 weeks that'll outscore that and make it worthwhile. So I think Tony will be sold en masse, and at similar value, the majority are going to go to Wilson, which is understandable. They did change to a back four, which is normally better for him. We did the statistics. If you didn't hear Clash of the Correspondents last week, I'll repeat those because I've finally looked into them. So it will now be 13 goals in 17 for Ivan Toney when they play a back four. It was 16, obviously, prior to the Wolves game. And I think it's scored 7 in 27 when they play a back three or a back five. There is the caveat to that they tend to play a back three more in the harder fixtures, but they did have a long spell towards the end of last season where they played a back four almost exclusively. They are certainly better for him in a back four. What will they do going to Forest at the weekend? I'm not sure. I'm not sure how they'll play that. My best guess would be they'll stay with a back four, I would think, because of the opponent, and then Mbeumo will probably play the central striker role. That would be, and they'll probably play Lewis Potter and Visser, or Damsgaard will come in, something like that, I imagine. Annoyingly, that potentially will appeal to those who have got Nottingham Forest defensively. And Dean Henderson's possibly a good one to play this week. I know a lot of people have got him and have missed his hauls recently. Nico Williams didn't start for Forest at the weekend, and that's very awkward now, potentially, in terms of whether you start him or not. You could do with a confirmation, Serge Aurier's got a little niggle or something like that would. I'm not surprised that Aurier stayed in the team at right back, because he was very good against Liverpool, actually. That said, they obviously got battered yesterday, so it could change again. On Wolves, decent result in the circumstances. Because Brentford away is not an easy away game, and there's obviously been a lot written and said about them over the last week following the beating against Leicester. And Neves scored his own fantastic goal. It feels at the moment like Ruben Neves might leave Wolves in January and might finish as their top goal scorer this season.
Yeah.
Where they're at in terms of goals scored is such a huge problem. But again, they're not far away. But it's another one. If you're looking for clean sheets this weekend, I think Brighton appealed, didn't they? Wolves away, Villa at home looks a decent too for clean sheet potential. So if you've got Brighton assets, I think you're playing them this weekend, I think.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about them in a second.
Have you got
I've got Lewis Dunk.
Starting.
I haven't set my bus team up yet.
Well, look at it.
And see.
Did you play it? You got Gay as well, have you?
Yeah.
You could play Dunk over Gay, didn't you?
Yeah, I'd play Dunk over Gay here, and I'd play Dunk over Doherty, but I might sell Doherty this weekend.
So at the moment, Dunk would be in your bus team.
Yeah, and I would, Trips is playing away at Southampton, Cancella's playing at home to Fulham, and it would be Dunk away at Wolves, but I'm thinking about buying Castagnier, which I would play over Pereira, so yeah.
So, okay, so you go back forward.
Doherty to Castagnier.
I see.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Costa's red card, you seen it?
First red card in the Premier League.
Yeah.
So,
I'm sure it wouldn't have been if VAR existed at the time.
26
I just
yellow
love
cards.
the fact that he leaned in for the tangle, and it was like he leaned in to headbutt, missed, and went, I missed there, I'm gonna go and have you again. And you're just not gonna get away with it now. The fact that Me goes to the floor, which he has to do, because if Me stands there, he gets away with it. Me has to go to the floor and make the officials completely aware to make them look. As soon as the opponent player goes to the floor, VAR is going to review it. He's an idiot. Mm-hmm. And Wolves can't afford to be without him at the moment. Jimenez came back to the club last week for treatment. But apparently, once he's had that treatment, he might just go straight back to Mexico. There's really weird stuff going on at that football club at the moment, and I understand why Wolves fans are very worried.
Brighton 4, Chelsea 1. We are one thing we are not is the celebration police. Brighton, enjoy it, but trust me,
you brought that up rather than me.
They fucking celebrated this one.
Well, I was thinking of myself about how I celebrated when my team won at Brighton. And do you remember what I said to you? They will definitely beat a Big Six team at home this season. Yep. And boy, did they beat them. Yeah.
I saw when I looked at the Chelsea team, I like to check the lineup just for Sky and making sure, seeing who's playing or not. And I'm like, isn't Potter like, he's now a kid in a toy shop with too many toys to play with? I'm like, what's he got here? Conor Gallagher, like, you can't trust these apps and what the lineup is like. But Conor Gallagher, is he left wing back or is Loftus-Cheek right?
So
like, it's mad. He piled the midfield. I don't know what he was trying to do to counteract.
I think I know, and I haven't watched all of the game.
Whatever it was didn't work.
No, clearly not. Basically, Pulisic and Sterling played as right wing and left wing, and they played without fullbacks. I think those two players, from what I've seen of the game, look like they played too high to be out and out wing backs. I think part of the structural idea in terms of flooding the midfield area and also having those two wide players extremely high to push onto Brighton's fullbacks, the whole idea was to stop Brighton being able to play out from the back. That was a structural idea. The problem was Brighton played through it. They managed to get through it. And that's despite the fact as well, I think what might have influenced the decision was thinking we can force Brighton to go long, but obviously Danny Welbeck didn't play. I can understand you're thinking, right, if Welbeck's playing, you can fire it up to him and he's really strong, he's good back to goal. Brighton didn't have that option. But the problem was that Brighton just were able to play through Chelsea. I think that was the idea, but it didn't work. And, Brighton essentially could have had this game won in 15, 20 minutes or so. Chelsea were very bad defensively, summed up by a kind of kamikaze performance from the normally brilliant Thiago Silva, who had several nightmare moments in the first half, which reminded me of his debut at West Bromwich Albion a couple of years ago. I really, really rate him as a footballer, but they're not right defensively at the moment. And I certainly wouldn't stress about playing your Arsenal attacking players at Chelsea at the weekend. No. If they defend like that, they get beat. And Arsenal have a good historical record against, as you know, Chelsea only rise for Tottenham. They normally roll over and have their bellies tickled for Arsenal. I'm sure it's just another elbow to Tottenham. They do. Go on, Chelsea, prove me wrong on Sunday. You normally get your belly tickled by Arsenal. Yeah, bad day.
I'm buying Trossard, by the way.
We'll come back onto that. I understand what you're saying about too many potential cooks for Chelsea. I think it's worth saying, look, although they got well beat at the weekend, and the result is bad, you shouldn't lose 4-1. It is his first defeat as manager, right? It's not a crisis. They're behind a little bit at the moment. I think they're on a process, Chelsea, but I think they have weaknesses. Offensively is a problem. And if you've got Thiago Silva putting in performances like that, when I think, look, Fofana's missing, Koulibaly's missing.
Injuries.
Yeah, he's also an issue. Then it's just going to add up and you're going to get done over, basically. Go on then, talk to me about, actually, before we do, Kepa injured.
Yep.
A number will own. We talk about this quite a bit on Clash of the Correspondents, actually, because obviously Danny Ward is Leicester's goalkeeper. Jordan Pickford's the obvious one, isn't it? Of Everton, I think.
He's been doing okay.
Back-to-back clean sheets. You've got Leicester at home, Bournemouth away, similar price. Or do you just play Ward?
Depends on how long he's out for, right? We don't know the prognosis yet, do we?
It's only 2 games, isn't it? It doesn't matter. Yeah. Obviously, if he's fit, you're not doing anything. But if he is ruled out for the 2 games, do you move or do you just play Ward?
I'd probably play Ward.
That's probably my take as well. But
there'd be things that I'd like to do that would have a bigger upside. Like moving Mitrovic to Scamacca could have a bigger upside than moving than Ward versus getting Pickford.
But if you were completely happy with your team, do you make the move? And
if you're looking at burning a transfer, then I'd rather you moved. But I think there's going to be bigger upside in the outfield players.
There will obviously be listeners who've got
get a clean sheet.
Kepa and Eberson. I think Pickford's the way to go.
Then yes.
Pickford's the way to go.
Don't leave yourself with no goalkeeper, for sure.
Go on then, Trossard. What's going on?
Oh, sell Zaha and...
Trossard only scores in these big games, right?
I don't care. The thing is, when I own him, it's not about whether Trossard returns, James. It's Brighton lose, or they draw or lose. Now, it's a very, very long stretch for West Ham to even be considered in the European places. But if we went on a run, we could climb up to 8th, 7th, if we start winning some games, 2 home games, and we'd be right back up there. So I want to do everything I can to sabotage anyone else that I think is in contention. And I don't really have a lot of influence across it because I don't really, this is one of the things I can do to sabotage an opposition team.
So what you're saying is if you get the £25,000 from the Brighton listeners, this time you won't buy him?
The money. I'd rather the money than West Ham get into Europe, sure. I need to sabotage Brighton somehow. So that's why I'm going to do it.
He's not scoring if you buy him.
And it's not about him scoring. I don't care about him scoring. This is not about FPL
There's a lot
and
of
Leandro
listeners that do
Trossard's
care.
points. This is about trying to put the brakes on Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club.
Do you understand the way the mindset of a certain fantasy football managers works? That I'm telling you honestly, some people will listen to what you just said and just decided I ain't buying him. And then mean that honestly.
I might do it just for shits and giggles and experimentation. We shall see. No, look, I can't. The move I'd make is Zaha to Trossard, and I don't think I'm likely to do that.
So you're not going to buy him?
Oh, so as it stands, I'm joking. Listeners, I'm joking. It was a joke. It's a joke.
You tweeted it. You can't go back on that.
A joke. Artistic license. Let's talk about Zaha, though, because he is a thorn in my side.
Before we do, just seriously, the Welbeck injury status is important. Because Trossard basically played up front at the weekend. And he's going to be higher to goal. Right? Now, listen, it's Wolves away and it's Villa at home. We don't know what we're getting from Villa yet. Wolves, despite their problems, are not terrible defensively. Leicester home fixture aside, but it is 2 decent fixtures. Would you buy on a serious, if you were buying right now, similar value, Trossard or Rashford? Where do you go, Suj?
Trossard, I think.
It's close.
On the fixtures, it is very close.
I just want you to know that Trossard's record against the big clubs is incredible.
Yeah.
That it doesn't mean he's not scoring against Wolves and Villa. And if you want to buy him, I've not got many reasons to put you off. One fascinating aspect, briefly on Brighton for the weekend, Mitoma obviously come back in at left wing, and I really like him. He's a super talent. He's blistering when he goes at people. Pascal Gross playing right back was, I'm sure Brighton fans saw the team and went, March right back? They're Stupinan left-sided centre-back. I don't think one of the things they'd have been considering is Pascal Gross at right back. And I did say to you on Friday...
March ahead of him.
I did say to you and he ended up finishing like left wing. So if you think, hang on, he didn't score the goal from right back. No, he changed later in the game. But I said to you on Friday's Patreon pod, I said, I bet something will happen where the two managers try and outdo each other a bit. And essentially that's what happened. One of the things, what's Gross good at? He's good on the ball, wasn't he? So it helped with Brighton's distribution, actually, in a weird way. I don't think we'll see a lot more of that, Gross at right back, but those who do still own because of his early great season performances should be aware of it. I think, how many games has he gone without returning now, Gross? Oh, yeah, he scored on Saturday. But other than that, he's not had any for a while, I don't think. So I'd probably be moving him on. There's better assets. Almiron would be one, for example, at the moment.
Palace 1, Southampton 0.
How did you feel about Wolves booking this week, Suj?
He is more of a troll to me than Trossard is. Like, at least I like Trossard. I think, you know what, he's a good player, and if Trossard signed for West Ham, I'd be like, yeah, great. If Zaha signed for us, I'd be like, all right. I don't like him. So anyway, it's frustrating because obviously West Ham away.
I just think, I'm sorry, and I know people want to defend him. I just think people just know he's so easy to wind up. Yeah, he just brings it on himself a lot, I think. And I hear people say he's misunderstood and that. No, people know that they can wind him up.
West Ham away this weekend's a difficult fixture, but then...
you've just slated him before he's getting hat-trick.
But then Forest, look, if we continue with Thilo Kehrer at right back, he might have quite an influential game, but then Forest away is the last game before the World Cup, and it feels stupid selling him with that as the last game before the World Cup with Zaha.
So you keep him, do you think, or
through gritted teeth?
I mean, I wouldn't be moving him for a hit. I don't think is my instinct at the moment. But he's 2 away games. Forest, yeah, I think to be honest, removed the Arsenal game almost. Have been better recently defensively, and obviously yourselves is a difficult game at the weekend. Do I see Wilfried Zaha Halls? No. Would I move him to a Trossard or a Rashford for free? Probably not. Subject to what else I had in my team. Would I move him to Foden? Yeah.
Yeah, up for sure.
Yeah. So I think it depends where you're at with what you've got, essentially. He's a reasonable hold. Do I feel like he'll go off in those 2 away games? No, I think he's just as likely to get you 3 points as he is to get you 13 points.
Southampton have tough fixtures before the World Cup. Newcastle and Liverpool.
Yeah, you're not going investing in them.
But what do you think in terms of Hasenhüttl and because they lose these 2, then that's 3 defeats on the row. He seems to buy himself a bit of time. But
actually, it's interesting. We have to do the correct narrative here because we've said so much about Palace and second half performances. Well, this was the other way round. Palace should have had the game finished by half time, but in the second half, Southampton have had 61% of the ball, and bar for better finishing from Che Adams, would have got something out of the game. So, look, this is okay. They've potentially got Romeo Lavia back for Newcastle, which I think will make a big difference for them as well. So he's been in training last week. Hasenhüttl suggested it would come down to a decision from the doctors and the physios, whether he'd play or not. So if he's back next week, that's a major, major plus for them. And actually, they've only conceded, 2 in the last 3? So a little bit better as well. They played a back 3 with Liankel to the right, which gives them flexibility to move between a 4 and a 3, as we'd seen in the Arsenal fixture. Now, not a disastrous day for Southampton. Look, anything they get in the Newcastle-Liverpool games will feel like a bonus. It feels that, I want to say that, are they 17th, Suj? Yeah, they're probably going into the World Cup in the bottom 3, I would suggest. But I don't think that necessarily means that they should change. They're the sort of one as well where, and this is really difficult to gauge, they won't have too many players going to the World Cup. They will obviously have some, but they won't have too many. what they do in terms of, is it a brand new pre-season? Will teams like Southampton really benefit from not many players going when we get on the other side? Because we've spoken about this since June, July. They've probably got the best run of fixtures on the other side. At the moment, I couldn't tell you where to look from a fantasy perspective, even to the extent that Cole Walker-Peters is obviously injured at the moment, who would maybe be one on the other side. But it might be they have a good run on the other side, Suj. Whereas a new manager would come in and you've got to get to know the players again. You don't know what the training regime's going to be. I think they're probably better off sticking at the moment.
Okay. Newcastle 4, Aston Villa.
Palace missed Corey again.
Yeah.
Who obviously, I don't know if it's now an injury. They missed him. Schlupp played again. It was more advanced as what typically happens. Elise played wide in an easier on paper fixture. Sorry.
Newcastle 4, Villa 0. I thought Villa would get battered here.
No, I didn't actually, because I think that you would think there's a lot of players looking to impress.
Yeah, I think that, but you get this false sense of confidence from a home win once the manager's gone. That makes you you don't realise this is a tough game now. Everybody's going to think going to St James's Park is going to be very difficult.
The majority of teams are getting beat at St James's.
There's a quality gap between Newcastle and Villa that's very obvious now. Yeah. And so, and it clicked for Newcastle and off you go. Bang.
It didn't surprise me that they went with essentially same team that beat Brentford. It was an easy call last week for the caretaker manager to put Buendia back in the team. And it was an easy call to say, even despite Luca Dean being back fit, I'd suggest to you on Friday, I don't think bring Dean straight into play against Almiron with the form he's in at the moment. It was an easy call to play the same team. And they got exposed as soon as they started trying to chase the game. That said, they had the odd moment at 0-0. Newcastle obviously blew them away eventually. Definite penalty. This was one of the clearer handball ones, I think we can say, the Ashley Young handball. Even Ashley Young didn't complain. That's one you certainly couldn't argue about the handball law. A couple of interesting ones for you statistically, Suj. So, Almiron, 57 points in 6 game weeks. Why don't we own him? It's 9.5 points per game in the last 6.
Because on Wildcard, Almiron blocked myself by having Pope, Trippier and Callum Wilson.
You're right.
So I'm stuffed in that. I'm not selling Trippier and Wilson. So then what do I do? I'm not going to move my goalkeeper on as well. That's a really luxury transfer. So my excuse is that I'm Almiron blocked.
It's interesting. Almi blocked. It's just, I'm not sure I can think straight now. Very interesting. Yeah, I obviously can get there. I just think it's more pressing for me to sort out moving on a Mitrovic or a Solanke for me this week than getting Almiron and chasing the points again. He's incredible form. Those who got absolutely brilliant. I'm not going to tell anyone not to buy him. It's just not top of my priority with the next 2. That said, if you look at even obviously the Chelsea games, game week 16, I mean, that currently looks better on paper than it did prior to the weekend, doesn't it?
He scored 6 goals in 6 games, Almiron. He'd scored 10 in his entire Newcastle career before. And that's a lot of games.
And this is why I spoke about it last week. This is why it takes us a lot of adaptation to, I think, accept these players like Almiron rather than just, is he on a run? Because someone always does it every year. But actually, I mean, that 57 points in 6 game weeks is staggering.
Yeah.
19-point return for Callum Wilson. One thing I did interestingly note, looking at his numbers from this season, is actually the first time he got bonus points this season. So when he scored previously, it's always been a 6 or a 5. Obviously, he got booked at Tottenham and was a 5. But even in the other games, he scored in 6-pointers. So, listen, it's not to put anybody off. My take would be, I mean, look, I can't get there. But if Haaland is ruled out, would I buy Kane on 4 yellows ahead of Wilson? I think I still do. I think. If Haaland was ruled out for the 2 weeks, I think I'd still go to Harry rather than Wilson.
Southampton away, Chelsea at home.
And I'm not
versus Liverpool.
Sure,
and then you've got Leeds.
I'm not sure that I'd go Wilson over Schumacher anyway. Again, it's what we're saying about the potential of the 2 home games for West Ham.
Yeah, but Southampton away, Chelsea at home, I think those are 2 good games for Wilson.
Well, arguably they are at the moment.
And you know the E word is being used with Callum Wilson right now. England. And that's He's going to hear it, right? On the Footballers podcast last week, they were talking about should he get a call up and that kind of thing. He's going to get talked about in the last couple of weeks if he scores in these games. And he's going to want to. So I think that motivation is definitely going to be there for him.
I think his motivation's there anyway.
Yeah,
he knows the
he
pressure
wants to prove
of
himself now.
Well, the pressure of Alexander Isak's going to be there after the World Cup as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, you look at that Newcastle front line now, and you're talking about some really talented players. Like Maximin's not even in the squad right now. You've got Almiron, Wilson, Joel Linton, all contributing.
With Joel Linton suspended against Southampton, and he has played a higher position in the last two against Tottenham and Villa. Presumably, St. Maximin comes in. I don't know what the impact would be on that for Newcastle. Does if St. Maximin plays, does Almiron have to put the brakes on a little bit, for example? I haven't dug into that sort of thing, but I think Newcastle invariably, when St. Maximin plays, do compensate for his brilliant ability a little bit. My instinct would actually be at the moment that because of that, there's every chance to just play Murphy instead of Joel Linton at Southampton, actually, and just use St. Maximin more as a weapon to ease him back. Yeah, I think so. And then Joel Linton would probably play again against Chelsea. It'd be interesting, by the way, that Chelsea game is going to be fascinating. I want to say it's 5:30 on a Saturday. You can just have a check. So, I mean, the atmosphere is great at St. James's nearly every game anyway.
It is.
But subject to results this week, if Newcastle win well against Southampton and Chelsea are shit again against Arsenal, Newcastle go into that game favourites, don't they?
Yeah.
And that brings a whole load of different pressure. And it'd be interesting to see. I'd be interested to see how they respond to that if that happens. Just another note on them, just thinking longer term. We mentioned our mate Ben Dinnery earlier. And I noted something that he posted, which I spoke about with our advanced tier patrons on Friday, that they've had the most muscle injuries in the league, Newcastle, which is interesting when you see who's immediately behind them. The teams behind them, second to eighth, are the 7 clubs that qualify for Europe. Got more games, stands to reason, right? Mm-hmm. But Newcastle ahead of all of them for muscle injuries so far this season. Now, they're also the most intense team for pressures off the ball at the moment this season. And I've spoken in the past about a couple of teams, Liverpool, for example, maybe holding back, not hitting top gear at the moment as part of a longer-term plan for their season, which for them, if that's what they're doing, is obviously regrettable at the moment because they're too far behind. But I just wonder if Newcastle might at some stage hit a wall later in the season. But at the moment, they're doing absolutely brilliant. And as I said, most teams are going to go to St. James's and get beat. Again, this weekend, everyone thinks they'll go to Southampton and win now. Pressure's different. You know, when you were in the position last year where you were doing well, it starts eating at you, doesn't it? It becomes tough, relentless.
Again and again to get up for it. Yeah, it's very, very difficult.
But they're doing great. I mean, right now, after City Arsenal, they're at this minute, the third best team in the league.
Yep. Fulham 0, Everton 0. Fulham.
Yes, I know my team's still third, by the way. Thank you.
Fulham obviously have 2 difficult fixtures now in City and United, and then Mitrovic getting himself on the 4th yellow actually maybe makes them come off now more than anything else. And Everton's last 2 before the World Cup are not jump out and let's go and dive into.
Leicester, I'm Bournemouth away is decent, mate.
Yeah,
Calvert-Lewin will fall into that. There definitely will be people this week who buy Calvert-Lewin. I'm absolutely certain of that.
I wouldn't be looking at Pickford, maybe goalkeeper, but I wouldn't be looking defensively.
You look at him on value right now, and if we were thinking longer term here, I don't think you couldn't buy a Calvert-Lewin over Wilson right now. I've said this a few times recently. The closer we get to this unlimited, the price is almost irrelevant. Can you afford player, yes or no? Doesn't even matter if you think their value right now, because they're going to go in 2 weeks anyway. It literally just comes down to, do you think Calvert-Lewin will outscore Wilson over the 2 weeks? My instinct would probably be no at this moment, despite it is 2 good fixtures for Everton. Perhaps Leicester at home and Bournemouth away are a little bit tougher than we might have thought going back a few weeks. Maybe Bournemouth is now easier and Leicester's tougher, I don't know. But there will definitely be people who want to gamble Calvert-Lewin. He's back fit. He should have scored at the weekend. He missed a chance which was so similar to a goal he actually scored against Fulham in behind closed doors season. Very similar. This time he missed it rather than scored it. That said, Fulham had the majority of this. And Mitrovic could have been anything between a -2 and a massive haul, I think. 10 shots he had, Mitrovic. which is the most without scoring in a Premier League game since Harry Kane against Brighton in, I think, late 2017, I want to say. He could have had a penalty. It was a debatable one with Willian. I'm inclined to think it wasn't clear and obvious, so I'm okay, crack on with it. It also could have been sent off for the challenge in the middle of the pitch, which I think, again, is probably just about right. But certainly if the referee had gone red, it wouldn't have got overturned. No way at all. I mean, it's right borderline that. I think if you look at it, he as he stands on him, his heel is partly on boot.
Yep.
So it's not completely over the top. And he definitely didn't mean it either. There was wasn't malice in it, in the sense that I think he's going for it and the tackle just comes in really quick. And of course, the player's laying on the floor, so where you land is essentially going to influence whether you get sent off or not. He was lucky, but I think it was probably just about right. They've obviously got City away and United at home. And it's not just City, is it? United look much better defensively, to the extent that I think it's one, when we'd analysed it going back a few weeks, we'd Mitrovic against Martinez. But, you know, I watched Martinez win so many headers against Harry Kane live in front of my face a couple of weeks ago. And he was outstanding again for United against West Ham yesterday. Like, Antonio couldn't get the better of him late in that game. For you think, it's a bit more of a bully boy coming on. And Mitrovic is probably the best of the lot in terms of his hold-up play as a real aerial target. Fulham also won't play diagonals. They won't just punt. It won't just go from Robinson to Mitrovic to peel off. It just won't play that way. It will be more a case of can Fulham get delivery from the left-hand side? Can they get Robinson high enough? Can they get Willian combining? Dallow's playing really well for United at the moment. He was great, I thought, yesterday. He should have been man of the match, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed.
We'll talk about him a bit more in a bit as well. I think United in Gameweek 16 can probably shut down that issue, thinking about it. So then it's City away, and he's on 4 yellows now as well. It's another one that feels like a sell. That feels like my biggest problem this week.
Yep. I'm likely to sell him, and then it frees me up a bit of money, and then that's where the Doherty to Castagne comes in as a punt for 2 weeks, potentially. But there are other punts I could take as well.
That said, if I said to you now, right, City beat Fulham 4-1, who do you think scores?
Yeah, it's always going to be Mitrovic.
Well, this is the point, isn't it?
Always going to be Mitrovic.
Yep. So, look, he's the pen taker, he's talisman. I don't think it's the worst. If I come into other problems, I'm happy to just play him. Yeah, it's not a must sell, but it feels like the obvious move currently for me. Pereira, by the way, only Kevin De Bruyne has made more key passes than him.
I think he created the most chances at the weekend
Premier
as
League
well.
this season. It's 34 key passes for the record. KDB is on 40. I mean, he's just the ideal fifth midfielder. But, as our good friend Andy Mears, Let's Talk FPL, pointed out, I still ain't seen his returns. it's always when he's on the bench, he seems to get the hauls and stuff. But yeah, he's ideal, isn't he? So I think he's just a bench. I can't say Almiron. I don't think I can justify going Pereira to Almiron. It's the sort of thing I could consider. I mean, I don't have the money in the bank anyway, but if I did, so you could go Pereira to Almiron and bench Mitrovic, for example, if you really want to keep. But I just think, I know I want Pereira on the unlimited. I'm up a little bit on him. I think he's just the ideal it's not even an ideal fifth midfielder. It's an ideal eighth attacker, if you will. It's just perfect for it. Except no one ever sees his returns because he always returns at the wrong time. But he's brilliant. Decordova Reeds has said suspended against City, so I imagine Kenny Tete will come in at right back. Just briefly on Everton, Sean speaks about this a bit more on COTC. And yes, I apologise to his face about Alex Iwobi, who's also playing a little bit more advanced. I think they've put the brakes on. I've spoken about Onana giving me Souček vibes. I felt on Saturday, brakes were on a little bit more. Garner Gay is obviously a complete protector. Iwobi was drifting into kind of half spaces, more as a number 10, a little bit more advanced. But in all seriousness, you are not buying him over Almiron. Fixtures aside right now at very similar prices. But yeah, he's worth keeping an eye on, and those who are on will be happy with what they're saying. If you did want to punt an Everton midfield attacker at around about that price value for the next 2 weeks, perhaps you've already got Almiron and want something else, then yes, Iwobi would be the one to go to. Sean thinks, by the way, that Patterson will come back in at the weekend. He thinks Coleman's done absolutely fine, but he thinks Patterson will come back into the team, and he's obviously dirt cheap. There's a gamble nature to it in the fact we don't know he's going to come back in. If it's affordable and you want an Everton defensive one, I'd pay the extra for Cody if it's affordable. Again, it's 2 weeks. It just comes down to can you afford the player or not. Tarkowski is obviously a viable alternative. And we've spoken to Pickford as kind of the solution for Kepa owners. And I'm going to shout out one of our patrons, Heidi Fieldman, who's quoted Tarkowski and Cody as Tarcoding.
Okay.
Love that. Very simple. You can't buy both. Well, you can, but you wouldn't.
Liverpool lost.
Staggered.
Why?
Well, Leeds are taking 2 points from 9, Suj.
Yeah, but they always...
They'd kept clean sheets in their last 2 home league games. They'd kept a clean sheet at Ajax. Admittedly, in all of those games that Bowen missed a penalty, right? City had a goal disallowed.
We out XG'd them.
Ajax had a couple of big chances. But it looked like it might... Certainly at Anfield, anyway. They haven't lost at home in front of a crowd since Sam Allardyce's Palace won there in April 2017.
Van Dijk's never lost at home and blah, blah, blah. Well, he has now.
We don't have to hear that stat anymore, do we? Sadio Mane still hasn't.
Yeah, look, even in the game against us, I'm like, that's not like playing Liverpool last year. They were better than us, sure. They deserved to win. But in the second half, we had some of the ball. We got in behind. We created chances. It's not... Sometimes teams lose their fear factor a little bit. And I think this is what it is with Liverpool this year, is like they don't have the fear factor anymore. And sometimes it takes a while for that to disappear. Like Manchester United, even after Sir Alex left, took a bit of time. But suddenly everyone's like, okay, hang on a second. You can get at these if you want to.
As soon as Sir Alex went, loads of teams started winning at Old Trafford. It was like once every month, it was like, it's their first win at Old Trafford for 50 years. You might be getting a bit of that now with Liverpool.
Well, if the floodgates open, and I think like for you now, you've said it before when we started talking at the beginning of the pod, Sunday when you play them on the counter, you think you can get them, right?
Oh, we're a dangerous opponent for Liverpool.
Exactly. So, and a year ago, you'd be like, okay, Liverpool at home, right? Let's hang in there, boys, and see what we can do. But I think that fear factor isn't gone. It doesn't mean they haven't got talented players and can still win any game, but it's a lot harder when the opposition will go for it. And Leeds, they go for teams.
The biggest, and there's some key things about it. I'll come back to Leeds, and unfortunately, I know the Leeds fans will be fine. You're talking about Liverpool. We will talk about Leeds because there's some important aspects for them at the weekend as well. But a few Liverpool stats, and I think the most damning one overall is from the 12 league games so far, they've been outrunning 8 of them. That's just not the Liverpool we know, mate. It's just not, is it? How many times have I sat and said, they'll get you, their intensity, particularly at Anfield as well, they just overwhelm you. And I know, look, Meslier's made 9 saves, but other than the one with Núñez in the second half, the one-on-one, they were all saves you'd expect him to make. It's not like, Meslier made 9 saves, Liverpool battered Leeds on the XG. No, the XG from the game tells us that Leeds basically deserved something from it. And even Klopp said it would have been harsh if Leeds had lost the game. Their current run rate for points is 51 points.
Oof.
Now, they're going to get more than that, aren't they? Surely.
Yeah, 60, 65.
Everton go above them if they beat Leicester on Saturday. Everyone thinks Everton will still be in trouble. Now, of course, we don't think Liverpool will be in trouble. But that tells me they've got a lot of work to do to get back into top 4 contention. And they will be in contention for top 4 because we've spoken about it before. At the moment, there'll be a period where they click and they win 6, 7 or in a row and they'll be back in it, no doubt. I'm so confident of that. They're just in a really, really bad moment. Their first 12 games of this season in terms of points return is identical to Roy Hodgson's first 12 games as Liverpool manager, Suj. 1-4, drawn 4, lost 4. I think it's the fact as well, it's who they're losing to is concerning, right? You've lost at Nottingham Forest and you've lost at home to a Leeds team that had got 2 points from the last 9, right? And no Leeds fan, I don't think realistically was thinking, we're going to win at Anfield at the weekend. Only Southampton had conceded the first goal more times than Liverpool this season. And that dates back worse if you include the last 4 games of last season, which they conceded first in all of them as well. There is one player I think is causing, I know there's a lot of focus on, say, Joe Gomez after the mistake for the first goal. To be honest, though, if Alisson doesn't slip, it's not a problem. Fabinho is becoming a huge issue for Liverpool. I think this is really important. So I think back to when they lost at Manchester United in Gameweek 3 and they got absolutely overwhelmed. And I'm watching that, I'm like, why is Fabinho sitting on the bench? You know United are coming intense for this tonight. Why is Fabinho sitting on the bench? And I've been watching this for a number of games now, and I really, really rate Fabinho. I think it's been so important for Liverpool. It's looking at the moment a little bit lost at times. I don't know if he's perhaps playing with an injury, which might have been carrying through all season. I don't know. We hear it and you think, he's been terrible for 2 months, and then you hear afterwards, don't you? He was carrying an injury for 3-4 months. He was playing with injections or whatever. But that is causing Liverpool a massive dynamic problem in midfield.
It would go against what we know of Liverpool with their red, yellow, green, amber system, and maybe they're that desperate. Is that the case, that their midfield is so weak that they're that desperate to force them through? Because Liverpool don't do that, right? No. When they're amber or red,
he just doesn't play them. That's right.
So it'd be surprising, but then that shows a little bit of lack of depth and desperation.
I'm sure the majority of Liverpool fans will agree that it's a glaring area that they did not fix the midfield problem in the summer. And in hindsight, we actually spoke about it in the summer, and we said, I'm not sure it's that bad, because when you put all the numbers there's actually quite a lot. Remember, they've been without Chamberlain, Curtis Jones, you've got Carvalho's come in now. Obviously, Harvey Elliott's a good... I didn't think he played well on Saturday, Harvey Elliott, to be honest, but he has largely done quite well for them. But no one can replicate that absolute brilliant protecting job that Fabinho's doing. And he's not playing well. And it's causing problems elsewhere in the team. And obviously, defensively, it feels like the mistakes are properly being capitalised on at the moment. That said, when you look at the big chances conceded, you could go through nearly every Liverpool game and you will see big chances created by the opposition. And when we talk about, say, Sunday against my team, if they give up big chances to Kane and Son, they get punished. It's almost a certainty, because the finishing level is so high that if they give Tottenham 3 or 4 big chances on Sunday, they'll get beat. So they can't afford to do that. But I think Fabinho is causing a massive issue for Liverpool. Don't buy their players. Don't do what I did and take a -4 for Trent Alexander-Arnold. Remember we spoke about last week about putting yourself in a position to be lucky. Well, I felt I did, but I needed it to be lucky on reflection.
Like really lucky.
There's no and there's no justification for buying a Trent or a Robertson at this moment. But also, I still think Dan's going to come on Clash of Correspondence next week before the Southampton game. I still think it's one. We'll look at it and go, can we take 1 week punts for Liverpool players this time next week? I think this week, you're probably not buying. If Haaland's out, do you consider Salah for captaincy this week?
Unlikely. I hadn't given a thought to captaincy this week, but probably not, no.
I mean, you'd say it's wide open, wouldn't you?
It is.
Wide open. It's arguably still a City player, isn't it?
I'd go to a different City player.
De Bruyne, but this is what I talked about, maybe even switching that to De Bruyne if you knew Haaland was out. Because it's probably him, isn't it? Or Foden. Is that too risky because of...
I think we might...
He can't get benched again. Yes, he can.
If we have information, then I would...
That's true.
Foden.
I think it would still be a City player, but when you look at the others, Arsenal going to Chelsea, yes, we've spoken about defensive issues for Chelsea, but captain a Jesus or a Martinelli if Saka's out, I'm not convinced.
Wilson on form, just chuck it on him.
But Kane against Liverpool.
Yeah, potentially.
Oh yeah, Wilson. Almiron in contention for captaincy this week if Haaland was out?
Nah, but I'd go Wilson maybe because of the pens.
He's the bloody form horse though, isn't he? Would you go a Bowen against Palace? No. It'd be wide open. If it's not a City asset, it's wide open otherwise, I think. Interesting. On Leeds. Somerville's 4.4, by the way, and took his goal brilliantly well. If you want to go him on the other side with Andreas Pereira, and perhaps if you need an enabler for this coming week, for whatever reason, obviously at home to Bournemouth is a decent fixture, and I think it's fair to say we can probably expect him to stay in the team. His numbers have been increasing on the rise, haven't they, Suj? I don't know if you just want to pull it up while I'm yapping. There's a few key players that were back for Leeds at the weekend, which is really important if you reflect on the defeat to Fulham. So obviously Luke Ayling played against Fulham, and I think that was rotation for Rasmus Christensen. I actually think he's largely done quite well at fullback defensively. I think he helped them at the weekend. Cooper didn't play against Fulham. He actually had a couple of dodgy moments in the game. I mean, him and Meslier could have killed each other in the first 40 seconds. But his leadership for Cooper is quite important. Is that a proper fire alarm going off, Suj? He says for silence, which is terrible for the podcast.
It's the intruder alarm.
Oh, right.
But it's not ours.
Well, no one's intruding in this office. I can see that in front of my face. Cooper's leadership's really important for Leeds. I don't think they'd have won the game if he didn't play. He does have haphazard moments, but I think his organisation's really important. The biggest one, Tyler Adams in midfield. We speak about him a lot on the Sky podcast. He's a phenomenal talent, gets through an incredible amount of work, and him being back in with Rocker was really important. That said, if Liverpool take their chances, Liverpool win the game, no one says anything, boo, yada, yada. I'm really pleased for Jesse Marsh that they won. I said to you last week, I don't think it's right to change, and I'm really concerned that if they just sacked him, it actually becomes a really nasty narrative about American managers. And I like him. I know there's a lot of listeners who don't like Jesse Marsh. I think there's particularly some Everton fans who want to wind up with him. But they probably liked what he did on Saturday. And I think I've seen enough to make me think they've got a clear identification and a plan of what they want to be. And one of the things we said last week was, look at the performances against Chelsea and Arsenal. It's those in the bigger games that tells us there might be something there in terms of a plan. Playing Bournemouth will still be a test this weekend because it's a completely different game. But the crowd will be back up now, you would think. And if they play with intensity, they'll beat Bournemouth. Scoring goals is still an issue for them. But the players they had back at Liverpool was massive for them. And as I said, I'm really pleased for Jesse Marsh, actually. I think he's got something about him. Cue Bournemouth defeat and sacking next week.
Arsenal 5, Nottingham Forest 0. Hanging in there, and then when a couple of quick goals go in, you're 3-0 down. It's a deck of cards, isn't it? Sometimes for some teams, it's very difficult. I mean, look, Arsenal are a very good team playing with great intensity. And whilst you're at 1-0, you're thinking, fine, all right, let's hang in and maybe we can nick a goal. When 1 turns to 3 so quickly,
you're dead.
It's like a house of cards falling down very quickly. And then when Arsenal smelt blood at home, and the sun is out and the crowd are clearly up for it and having a good time, they're going to want to go and hunt for more, and as they did, and go and get 5.
Arsenal are very, very capable. You used to actually have this under Wenger, and they've got it back, that sense that you could go to the Emirates and you could get destroyed if they played free-flowing football and stuff, and they are at the moment. They do have that aura that they're capable of really burying teams at home. Once it goes 2-3-0 that quickly, I think the towel went in a little bit. I mean, Jesus was great, and he had more penalty touches than Nottingham Forest, 16-15. But he doesn't give the impression that he's going to be scoring the goals at the moment, interestingly.
I've got one of my cousins that plays FPL.
Owners can feel very unlucky.
He plays FPL really casually and comes up with like really random reasons for buying and not buying certain players. And I'm always like, your logic is like so casual. And he's like, it's cold. It's winter. Jesus plays crap in winter.
Oh, you said
I'm
this
not
last
buying
week.
Jesus.
I think I'm going to sneeze.
He done all right, you know. Yes. It's not me.
Oh my God, we're talking about Arsenal.
It's not me.
We're talking about Arsenal as well.
And he popped up. I was so glad he popped up with 2 assists because there's points to go with it with Jesus. So,
the Jesus owners should be holding, and actually the Chelsea fixture might work out quite nicely for him at the weekend. The headline news, of course, is Saka's injury. And, of course, Reece Nelson comes on. He's 4.8. I think Somerville would be a better get this week, by the way, if Saka was ruled out and you need to buy someone at that price. But it scored twice, and you just think it was Saka's goals, don't you, is what you think. So I know there was a number who, obviously, with the Haaland news, moved the captaincy to Saka, and I don't think that was a bad decision.
Nah, I don't think so either.
And you were really, really unlucky. I think the obvious one, if he is ruled out injured, is Foden. If he's unavailable, I think probably the 2 we'd mentioned a bit cheaper, like Trossard or Rashford, or Jared Bowen is obviously another one. I think that's just punting West Ham's home fixtures at the moment and punting him rather than actually what you're physically seeing or feeling. But ideally, you'd obviously want to hold. Oh, there you go, Suj. Something just fell off the wall. There you go. And it is Halloween, I can assure you. So, do you know what? We should just cut the Arsenal games out of the podcast.
Spooky shit happens when it's them.
Just a note on Odegaard, something I noticed. All of his goals have been against the 3 promoted teams. And that equates to, he's got 58 FPL points overall, which is very good at his value. But 36 of them have come in those 3 games against the promoted teams. So it's only, how many games have Arsenal played? I want to say 11, maybe. It's only 22 points in the other 8 or so. So he might be a bit of a bully boy, Odegaard, but he might be one to look back on later down the line, you know, when they have Bournemouth at home and you think, Oh, I'm on a 1 week punt. Yeah, there is a trend there for good returns against, let's say, the weaker defences. And I think although Fulham have been very good this season, I think you'd still put them in that cluster of one of the weaker ones defensively. It's their goal scoring that's got Fulham in a great position this season. For Forest, write it off. For Nico Williams owners, I don't know what to say to you because you probably do want to start him this week. I imagine that. Have you got? No. I imagine most people who've got him will want to play him at home to Brentford with no Tony. I don't know if he plays or he doesn't play. No. Not a clue. Henderson, it will be popular, I think, for those owners this week. I think you play Henderson over Ward this week.
Yeah.
I think.
Agreed.
With that fixture. I wouldn't be surprised. I actually said this prior to the Tony suspension to you that I would imagine they'd beat Brentford at home. And I'd feel stronger about that now. They also have Palace at home in their last game. Just 2 decent home fixtures. Would you consider a Gibbs White, for example?
Nah.
Awoniyi is not completely out of my thoughts. I think he's a decent one for the 2.
I would only go to Awoniyi if I really wanted the money for something else elsewhere. Otherwise, I'm happy to go to Skamaka.
Yeah, I don't think I can. I don't think Mitrovic to Awoniyi doesn't feel right. But I had thought prior to the weekend, if Solanke was ruled out until the World Cup, for example, he's obviously kind of similar price. But I think Solanke's got 2 decent fixtures, Leeds and Everton. I don't think I can justify that with a transfer. I bet he returns well in one of the 2 games, though. I think he's a potential solution. He might be the sort of one, Suj, where if people want to go, if Haaland's out for the 2 weeks, Haaland to Awoniyi might be the one that forces KDB in. That's all.
Awoniyi for me is if I need money. Simple as that.
Yeah.
If I don't need the money, then I won't be looking
He's
at
not
it.
off the table. I think he'll do well in these 2 games. That said, it always feels like, look, they've had a bad defeat. Cooper could bring Brennan Johnson back in, but that's 2 games in a row now. Johnson hasn't started and Awoniyi has, and all Awoniyi's returns so far have been in home games, and they've got 2 to come. I think he's a decent one to punt for the last couple. I would, if I was buying him or Solanke now, I would buy Awoniyi.
Last but not least, James, we are into VAR check time now.
Yeah.
We've done 95 minutes.
We haven't spoken about a lot on VAR. It was not a huge week for it.
No. But 95 minutes in, this is when they start checking for a goal.
Oh, my God.
And we'll be here for another 4 minutes, don't worry. So, Manchester United 1, West Ham United 0 is the last of the games, James. I was saying previously, it was a good game for Manchester United. They played well. They're a decent team. Nice footballing team, good shape. Dalot played well. Ronaldo obviously started, which I think will be headline news for quite a lot of people.
5% chance conversion for Ronaldo in his minutes this season.
When he was at
16, 17%.
A few shots, and I'm like, let him shoot from out there and stuff. Like he can score. He's very good, but I didn't feel threatened. I don't feel like he's a threat at any moment. Whereas Rashford coming in on the back post there was a threat. I don't know if United invited the pressure on. They were happy for West Ham to build up from midfield, but we have to get better at the final third, the quality in the final third, the final pass,
the one
being incisive.
Particularly the Bowen one, where Maguire managed to block it. And if it goes in there, I don't think they can have any complaints, and you finished quite happy.
Yeah, I mean, David De Gea pulled off a couple of very good saves. Zuma's header from the corner and Rice's shot from outside the box and stuff. I think over the course of the play, West Ham didn't deserve a draw. Off the chances that we had, we probably deserved a draw. That's probably how I would describe it. But United were decent. Rashford looks to be in decent form. Another one like Callum Wilson that we're thinking, look, if I play well in the next couple, I might put myself on that plane to Qatar. And I think Marcus Rashford looks really good and really interesting.
Rashford's goal was Ronaldo-esque, actually.
The way he Tilo really Kehrer didn't even get off the ground, right? And Tilo Kehrer is often a centre-back, and you're like... When someone's running in, they will get a leap on you. It's very difficult. But Kehrer didn't even get off the ground. There was no challenge.
If you didn't know, and you was watching it from too far away to tell who the players were, and I showed you that, you would go, that's Ronaldo.
It was Ronaldo-esque, yeah. No doubt about it.
Really was.
No doubt about it.
This goes back to, listen, he does still have positive influences in some cases. That's going to be something they've worked on together. I'm fairly certain of that. I didn't know Marcus Rashford could do that. Super header.
But it was his second time he did it in the game.
That said, when I saw Ronaldo was in the team, I did think, why the fuck have I taken this hit to get Marcus Rashford in my team? I was regretting that instant. I wouldn't have done it if I thought Rashford was going to play wide. I wouldn't have got him in. It will be interesting to see what happens next in the remaining 2 games. I suspect against Villa won't be too much of an issue if Ronaldo plays again. I think they'll have trouble at Fulham. This has come full circle about Mitrovic now. I think they'd have trouble at Fulham if Ronaldo plays. They might have opportunities and score, but I think like Fulham will be quick in terms of how they play through you and stuff. Villa is unpredictable now with Unai Emery. I imagine they'll be more inclined to sit off it a little bit and think the likes of Mings and Konsa can deal with Ronaldo. Obviously, Fernandes is going to be a miss for that game as well. I didn't like that United invited the pressure. In that I wasn't concerned. I was willing you to score, to be honest. But I felt uncomfortable watching the way they, and again, we can do the narrative after, and they kept the clean sheet and stuff. I think a little bit was by luck rather than judgment at the end of the game. And I think part of that is, I think West Ham are one of the worst teams in the league to try and invite pressure on against. Because when the ball comes in the box against you, I don't care who you are, you will shit yourself. Because you've got so many physical players on set pieces. You've ended a period there. We got Dawson, Zuma, Souček, Rice, Antonio. Means a lot going on there. Even Kera has obviously added to that now as well. And you think, oh, Jesus, it only takes one header from a corner or something. So I thought it was bad strategy from United. That said, I agree with your comment that I think throughout the game, West Ham largely disappointed.
I mean, Ben Rama had a good game. He was the only one that really was trying to take the attack to Manchester United, and I think he looked at it as an opportunity to try and really cement his place in the team. I think, and he will be moving forward. Like, people will have memories of him at the start of last season when Antonio was doing well, Ben Rama was picking up a lot of the assists, and I think he's one to keep an eye on if we have a decent run and he's getting into the team, because he's always in and about it. He likes to get some shots off, but other than that, no West Ham. I wouldn't mind Marcus Rashford, but it might be a luxury move for me.
I imagine with Fernandes suspended, Eriksen will probably play higher at Villa, and Fred will come into the team, I guess, alongside Casemiro, which might not be a bad thing for the front players potentially. On Dalot, just briefly, his returns when United have kept a clean sheet this season, 11, 8, 9, 6, 9. The 11 was an attacking return with an assist at Southampton. But the other 3 of the 4 clean sheets, he's mopped up 8 bonus points from just clean sheets, no attacking return, from 4 other clean sheets. So United clean sheet so far, he's averaging 2 bonus points without an attacking return. That makes him a strong contender. He's on 4 yellows. He will be very, very popular. If those are thinking, I don't know if I do want Man United on the other side, have a look at their fixtures on the other side of the World Cup. I think a lot of us will be starting with 3 Manchester United players, and I think he particularly, if he gets the yellow card before, will be hugely popular. Hugely popular. The best thing for non-Dalot owners, if you want him on the other side of the World Cup, is it gets booked this weekend. He skives down Leon Bailey, and as a moment, Bailey will then inevitably come off on like 58 minutes for the 1-pointer for those who started. Yeah, Dallow's going to be really interesting. They've got good fixtures on the other side of the World Cup, United.
Nice.
Starts with Bournemouth and Forest.
Cool.
And Wolves. Those are the 3 fixtures. So even more, you think all the defensive ones pretty good there as well.
Good. Listeners, we have spent a long time going through the games there. Hopefully we've covered off for any dilemmas that you have around players specifically.
Any concern about buying Schumacher, just quickly?
Nah.
Did he start?
Yeah.
Yeah? No doubt on that?
No. But there is a lot of talk that he's not performing as well because Paqueta's not there as a link-up player, because Flynn Downs has played as a third midfielder.
That's not working.
I think 2 home games that we would expect to win, I think he won't play the same formation. It's Liverpool and Manchester United away that he's played that formation with Downs there, right? So
Bournemouth at home as well.
Sorry, Bournemouth as well. But
so that's the concern.
Different. I think he'll try something different. Lanzini may be coming in. I still think Scamacca's a decent shout for the last 2.
I think Mitrovic to Schumacher as it stands now is my most likely move this week.
Agreed. James, do you want to tell the listeners what they've got to look forward to for the rest of the week?
Yes, I shall. The People's Poll vote is out to around about 5 o'clock today. You have 3 options in the vote on Twitter, which is either concussion protocols might finally win the vote this time. It's obviously in the kind of media light again at the weekend. It's part, if you're thinking we didn't discuss Emi Martinez, that's part of the reason why. Also, Coventry City might be about to be made homeless again at the time of recording. We don't know if they can play at home in their fixture tomorrow night against Blackburn Rovers. That football club has been a mess for a long time, and it's not all their fault, it's worth saying. Fascinating story with Coventry. And there have been calls over the last couple of weeks, which is on the rise, and I don't think anything's going to come of it, but it's an interesting story nonetheless, about calls for Iran to be moved out of the World Cup, who England opened their tournament against 3 weeks today. It just feels remarkable in the middle of a football season, doesn't it? Wednesday, Lamici, one of our patrons, is going to be joining me for the Sky Fantasy Football Podcast because you're pissing off to Ireland for the day.
Going to Ireland.
Have fun. Thursday's Clash of the Correspondents, which will be available for patrons today, is Everton versus Leicester with Sean Norton and Aaron Lagor. I'll be streaming Friday afternoon. Suj James. Deadline stream later time Saturday of 12:30pm UK. It might be a lay-in for me. I can confirm that my son definitely does not understand the concept of extra hour in bed for the clocks. Our Patreon podcast this week for intermediate tier and above patrons. Q&A today. Tomorrow, UCL Fantasy Match Day 6 preview. Wednesday, our Chelsea correspondent, Gary Mantle, is going to be joining me to quiz me on substitutes. That's all he's told me. Thursday, we're going to do Tottenham because you're not available till then. And we'll be reflecting on Tottenham's performance in Marseille, no doubt. And Friday will be our Game Week 15 preview show.
Lovely jubbly.
Talking tactics for advanced tier patrons this week, we'll feature a closer look at Newcastle United.
Good. And listeners, we've given you the patron blurb earlier in the show, and if you're still with us, then it might be something you want to consider because you like the sound of our voices long enough to put up with an hour and 45.
I didn't realise we were speaking that long. That's because we talked about stuff at the start, like FPL deadlines.
Yeah, indeed. No, it's been good. It's flown by. I hope you've enjoyed the show.
No
give
questions.
It a like and a share.
Ain't got no time. You don't want to do 2 hours.
No time, mate. No time. Time is money. Stay safe. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Be nice to each other. Play it your way. Don't take -4s for Liverpool defenders like me. Cue music, please, man child.